Hey all, this is Ed,
And this is Kara.
and this is your day's dumpster fire. That wasn't our normal intro.
That was not our normal intro, but I kind of dug it.
Yeah, same here. What happened?
I don't have an answer.
I don't know either. I've had so many computer problems lately that I'm just excited if something turns on, shuts off, and records, and we hear stuff.
It somewhat works, so we're happy about it.
So yeah, I'll have to go back and dig in and see like why our intro got all weird like that. But I mean, yeah, it did kind of work. I mean, I maybe for the theme of today's show of looking at Custer's Last Stand, we're looking in George Armstrong Custer and all that, and the craziness that is this conflict of the Indian Wars, and just be forewarned, I'm probably I prefer to use the term Native American, but when you're studying the history of all this stuff, a lot of it is Indian, and Custer being psychotic and whatnot. So yeah, maybe that intro will work. We'll have to just kind of play it by ear and see what happens there, but yeah, before we get into Custer's Last Stand, what's your trash can fire? Because I heard you got your butts kicked by a bunch of school children.
Sure did. I organized a kickball game between myself and some co-teachers against my 12 middle schoolers, and so this is how it went. We were kicking their butts. The game was only 30 minutes long, and we hit the 30-minute mark, and the kids were kicking, and we were fielding, and the PE coach who was playing referee was like, all right, we're at time, but you only have one out to get, and then we can call it a game. And I was like, we'll just give them the out because, like, we're up by 3. It's fine. So we decided to do that. One of my kids comes up and kicks the ball, and he happened to kick it in, like, a pocket where it wasn't covered. And mind you, we had, like, 4 outfielders, and he happened to kick in the one area where it wasn't covered. Girl who was closest to it was able to grab it and field it and chuck it to the pitcher. And then he threw it at the runner, but he missed the runner. And then they got a grand slam out of it and won the game by a point.
Nice.
Yeah. So now I get to hear all kinds of trash talk come Monday morning. It's like, man.
Yeah, because those kids are never going to let that down.
No. But at the same time, would I rather have a bunch of happy trash-talking 13-year-olds on Monday or a bunch of very, very salty 13-year-olds on Monday?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one to try to navigate because, it's important to teach a lesson to a 13-year-old that, hey, failure is okay. I mean, hello, we have a podcast all about failing. Coming up short. But then on the other hand, too, it's just like I'm thinking of that Seinfeld episode where Kramer he gets involved with that karate class.
Mm-hmm.
Like he levels up to black belt. Like he's at black belt like within weeks, and everybody's like, "Dude, how the heck did you get up there? How is it that you are now a black belt already?" And so they went and they found out that he was, as a grown man, he was fighting like 10-year-old kids. And he was just dominating them, and like he was just throwing them down on the ground left and right. And so that's kind of what I envisioned there, is that you as Kramer just like ha ha ha,
Yeah, then we get our butts
whipped. Then you find that one 10-year-old that like legit is more advanced, and then you get laid out.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't mean to get all like teacher philosophy over here, but I will say that sometimes it's better to model how it looks to be a good loser.
Yeah.
So I think either way, it's all right.
Yeah, the exception is Mario Kart.
Well, Mario Karts, you make enemies out of friends.
I've seen Mario Kart just destroy families.
Yeah, man.
I mean, you and I have
Families
played,
and ancient friendships.
like you and I've played with your husband, my wife and our kids get involved, and yeah, that blue turtle shell that's an FU.
Yeah, man, you broke my couch.
Did I really?
Well, it doesn't hook anymore.
Wait, what? Seriously? I didn't know I broke your couch.
No, it's cool.
For real?
It's not like super broken.
Oh crap! I mean, I didn't think I was that animated. I mean, I figured that the controller flying through your TV screen would be a bigger deal, but I mean, hey, I guess, a broken couch is a broken couch.
True. No, the couch is fine. Just giving you a hard time.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, because I'm hard on couches. My physique and my high keto barbecue diet and couches don't go along. Like we just replaced our mattress, and we had to replace those like weird IKEA wooden slats. If you know, you know. And yeah, like my wife and I will sit down on the edge of the bed, and then we just start hearing like cracking and like, cool. Yeah, we are physically at our prime right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, no, that's actually a good trash can fire to have, because it's amazing how perfectly well it ties into George Armstrong Custer. We've all heard the tale. You hear it in elementary school, junior high, high school. There's a billion books out there about it, and I figured this would be a slam dunk, one episode, super easy. Yeah, like a very, like, I could pound out an episode on Custer's Last Stand, because what screams a dumpster fire more than, say, the President of the United States getting a phone call, or this time a telegraph, saying, hey, you just lost an entire battalion of highly capable, trained, for the most part, experienced cavalry, which was back in the 1860s and 1870s. The cavalry was considered like, today's Delta Force. These were your best of the best soldiers. These were the most capable, the fast maneuvering. They had the latest and greatest technology. And imagine if you're the president and you find out that you just lost like 400 to 500 men in 2 hours.
I mean, I'd be a little taken aback.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, when we think about a dumpster fire in a military sense, and I feel like I always do the military stuff. You should do a military episode sometime.
I should.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that would go over better. When we look at the what really went into this, like when we dive into what was going on here, because I feel like this is a battle that has been glorified and equally tarnished to the point where there's so many misconceptions, there's so many misquotes, there's so many inaccuracies based upon public opinion rather than what actually happened. So history records Custer as kind of this crazed, power-hungry lunatic who, I don't know, for the lack of better words, he just wanted glory, and he didn't care how many of his men got killed or whatever. But then that's not necessarily true. But it makes for a good movie. It makes for a good story when you portray him as this delusional leader. That's not to say, though, that he had his faults. Like, was he very charismatic? Yes. Was he the first guy to lead a charge in a battle? Was he about his glory? Yeah, he was all of those. But like he did have this personality, and when we kind of look at his background here in this first episode of this, you'll kind of get enough idea about it, like his character and how his character as a whole, even though he was a competent officer, he made his way all the way up to the rank of a general. He was like in his early 20s. He was the youngest general in the Union Army. He was capable in that regard, but you'll see some personality traits that really held him back. Then conversely, we need to look at the side that kicked his ass. We need to look at the Lakota. We need to look at Sitting Bull. We need to look at what these Native American tribes were doing prior to the Civil War, during the Civil War. What were they doing differently? How were they seeing things differently? How were they strategizing differently? And so that's when we look at like this first episode, we're going to look at Custer. We're going to look at his background. We're going to look at his time in the Civil War, because he was a pretty capable soldier in the Civil War. We're going to look at some of the post-war issues where he was dealing with more politics nonsense. Yeah.
The Reconstruction era, man.
I know. Yeah, the Reconstruction stuff it's psychopolitics, meaning like psychology and politics wrapped in. How do you come out of a war that ripped the country in half, and then how do you get the defeated people back on board with the original ideas that, all men are created equal? Hey, we're not going to go forward with slavery. Like that into itself is an episode.
Yeah. And then on top of that, the man with the plan, who didn't really even share the plan, was murdered.
Yes, I heard he died with a splitting headache.
What was it, in a theater or something? I can imagine. Maybe the singer was awful.
Yeah. Or maybe it was the guy behind him with a gun that, shot him in the back.
That might have something to do with it.
And so, yeah, I just laughed at Abraham Lincoln dying.
Jesus.
Yeah, well, there's a special place in hell for me. So, but I mean, Abraham Lincoln, he was a jolly guy. He would understand. He would be cool with it.
Honestly, you're probably
yeah. I know. He's. I've seen the movie. He's pretty laid back.
Everything I've read, he was all about his jokes.
Yeah. Which is that could be another episode into itself.
I would love to meet the man. Anyway,
yeah, I agree. I would easily go on a date with that guy.
I would totally do a double date with him and Mary Todd.
Oh my gosh.
With Mary Todd, that's my dinner date, dead or alive.
I want to see Mary Todd though at her worst. Like,
I want to see her at her prime, like when she met Lincoln and she was super sharp and she was all about like being into the current events. I would love to just listen and have a conversation with her. Yeah,
because she would call people out on a whole bunch of stuff. Her later years, she kind of took a mental toll when child is dying and your husband's trying to like save a country, but even still then, she was a pretty interesting character. So yes, she's fascinating. Yeah. Anyways, sorry about that. No, we're good. So yeah, the first episode we're going to be looking at Custer. The second episode I'm going to be looking at if for those of you who've seen the movie 300, and which is the most historically, I'm doing air quotes, the most historically accurate interpretation of what the Spartans were like, which is very loosely borderline, maybe a fragment of truth to it, but it looks cool. You can never go wrong with a bunch of buff dudes with sprayed on abs and swords and sandals, and it's like you've got a hit in slow motion, and it's in so much slow motion, especially when the blood is flying at a different rate than the body. Because gravity operates different for a body versus blood, even though it works the same. But we're not going to get into that. Zack Snyder, you did good. Listen, if their oracle was an actual oracle, the blood can spray at a different rate of speed. The rules and laws of physics do not exist. Anyway, but I mean, it's a Zack Snyder film. I'll take it. I'll watch it any day. And but. No, it's a solid entertainment. But it is. But it does give you an idea, though, of some of the Spartan philosophies in that the if you're born a boy, you need to be prepared to survive. And if not, if you don't have what it takes, then we're going to put you out to pasture. And so that's kind of like what the Lakota were to a certain degree. We're talking about a Native American. I don't want to say it's a tribe. It wasn't a tribe. It spanned multiple states. It was huge. It went all the way from Michigan and Minnesota all the way over to, I think it went all the way out to the borders of Idaho. So it was a
Wow.
massive tribe. It was basically a country into its own right. These guys, they fought, they knew how to fight on horseback, on the ground, on running. They knew how to fire guns, muskets, repeating rifles. They knew explosives. They were trained on everything: bow and arrow, spears, knives. Like these guys did not mess around. And so like I want to spend the second episode kind of diving into that, because once you see their culture and once you see how they valued things maybe a little differently than the white Americans or the Anglos, or however you want to portray the Union Army at that time, there's two very different philosophies that went down that would ultimately lead to episode 3, where how do you explain one of the most highly regarded tacticians, one of the most highly regarded soldiers and heroes of the Civil War, getting absolutely decimated in just a few hours in like an open field? So yeah, let's take a look at this. Let's kind of dive into George Armstrong Custer, because it's really important to understand his psychology a little bit, because I think a lot of people, and I'm thinking maybe a lot of like ultra conservative today, ultra right, the far right, that would say that a certain former president is God and that he can't be touched because he's God. That's kind of the vibe I get with Custer.
Okay.
So his early years. He was born December 5th, so that's actually one day before my birthday. So I don't know what that means. Hopefully I'm not going to get ambushed here soon, but yeah, he was
Knock on
born
some wood.
December 5th, 1839 to Emmanuel Henry Custer and his second wife, Marie Ward Kirkpatrick, in New Rumley, Ohio. So for anybody who knows anything about Midwestern history, side note, basically a lot of men would marry to have lots of kids. The idea is to slam out as many kids as possible because that's free labor. That's how your farm works, kind of a thing. And if your wife dies, giving birth to their ninth child or something like that, then you go find another one.
Get another one and pop out some more.
Yeah. So the next thing you know, you have a farm of like 18 kids all working. Yeah, the last US president that fell in that category was Harry S. Truman. But yeah, side note, completely useless information to all this, but that's the reason why Henry Custer had a second wife, is probably because the first one's body just like, I'm done. Go deal with somebody else. So he had two younger brothers, Thomas and Boston, as well as three other half siblings. So the legend goes that these boys were like a clan. They were like a gang, and they did nothing but prank each other and cause all sorts of havoc. They literally just, throughout the entire town, these boys did what boys do. And I hate to make the statement, hey, boys will be boys, but in this case, yeah, the boys will be boys, where they just did stupid stuff and they would dare each
How
other.
dare they be normal children?
What's that?
How dare they be normal children?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, what determines normal? That today the phrase "boys will be boys," in terms of how they maybe in their younger years or more compromised states of mind, how they treat women, and we're just supposed to just wave that off like, oh yeah, boys will be boys, ladies don't take it personal as they're being raped. So yeah,
Yikes.
that's a phrase that I think by today's standards we need to really renegotiate. But we got a bunch of boys, because I mean I taught high school. I've seen boys where they're trying to, hey, I could jump off this building and be okay, or I could eat this whole bag of habaneros and I'll be okay. It's kind of like this. You know that sushi dish, and I'm jumping to the opposite end of the world here. You know that sushi dish where they have that puffer, where if they don't cut that puffer meat just right, the person who eats it will ingest a toxic amount of poison and die within minutes. Have you ever heard of
Yeah,
that before?
I have heard of that. Yeah.
So let me ask you this question: how was that determined? How?
Probably trial and
Yeah,
error.
how many Japanese bros are like, dude, you want to try this? No. All right, you're a sissy. Well, crap, I don't want to be a sissy. Well, we're gonna cut it here. You try it. Oh, okay, you died. All right, next guy. Do you want to try it? Yeah, sure. And they cut it a little closer. He dies, and then there's so many dudes later on that die, but then there's one that survives. And like, cool, we got it. That's the true heart of boys will be boys, right? It's like people who get stung by a jellyfish. I was actually
Yeah.
on a trip one time. I was with the Boy Scouts. We were in California. They found a jellyfish, and they wanted to know how many times could a jellyfish sting somebody. And so they picked this thing up and they dropped it on their arms and like, oh crap, that hurts. Now my arm's like a swollen up watermelon. So like, okay, hey dude, you try it. All right, cool. And then it's a slightly less watermelon arm, and then it's a slightly less and less and less. And then it gets down to the eighth person, and they're like, yeah, this isn't bad at all. All right, cool. We now know how many times a jellyfish can sting a dude and not cause any harm.
Nice.
So that I feel like that's the mental dynamic that was going on with these guys. The funny thing is that Custer's education, one of the things that we really don't understand today is just how easy an education comes, right? We fully expect to send our kids to elementary school or preschool. We fully expect them to go to junior high. We fully expect them to go into high school. And COVID showed when it was at its height, it's like, crap, we can't send our kids into school. I don't know what to do. I can't go to work. What do I do? But when we're looking at the 1840s, 1850s, school was not available to everybody. And so Custer had to live with his sister, or I'm sorry, his half sister and her husband to attend school. So we're talking a dude who's just trying to get a basic education and like maybe get through junior high or high school. Before entering the United States Military Academy, he attended, so he got through his school, but Custer, or his basics, he got through like what we would say high school today, but back then, I'm sorry, they would say back then it was more of a high school setting. By today's standards, it's like the 8th grade. And so Custer got through that, and then he was like, cool, I want to become a teacher. And so he attended the McNeely Normal School, later known as Hopedale Normal College. Little side fact here, before Arizona State University was known as, ASU, or the top party school in the country, it was actually known as the Arizona Normal School. And whenever you hear that word normal in an education setting, that is it's a way of saying it's a teaching school to teach teachers how to teach.
Right.
Like for me, I actually went to I went to ASU's teaching college, got my teaching degree from them. So like if you look at my degree, there's like a little fine dotted line in the bottom that says I graduated from the Arizona State Normal School. That's what Custer did here. And so I want to point out real quick, I feel like this is how Custer became so successful in the Civil War. To lead people, you have to know how to connect to them. But better yet, to lead people, you need to understand how they think and how they learn. And that is the singularly appropriate education that Custer got while training to become a school teacher.
Okay.
And so like when he was going through all this, yes, he was being trained on how to, how do you teach math to people? How do you teach grammar? How do you teach history? He was also learning how young minds think and how they develop and at various stages. I'm pretty sure you've already seen that, Kara, where
Mm-hmm.
you have different age groups where they are clearly different stages of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so
100%.
you're like you're trying to teach a class like, okay guys, like you need to shut up. Yeah, you've already got this figured out, but let these other groups kind of catch up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And so yeah, I'm kind of harping on this a little bit because I feel like this is kind of a big deal. It I think this is a part in Custer's history that we overlook. We always talk about, oh, leadership is your charisma, it's your decision making abilities. Leadership is how do you stand out? But in reality, leadership is understanding who is following you and understanding how they think and how they work and maximizing that to achieve an overall goal. So, yeah, basically put, he studied to be an elementary school teacher. Now, right before attending West Point in 1856, he was a teacher for like just 1 year. So keep that in mind. He was it's hard to believe that a guy who got absolutely annihilated in the plains was a school teacher. I don't know. I think it would cause a lot of cause for concern or pause for concern for parents. Like, could you imagine, Kara, if you've had parents of your students come to you and be like, I think you're going to get annihilated in some horrific battle. Why should I have my son or daughter attend your class?
I think it says something to the fact that he only taught for a year and then he was like, I'm done.
Well, yeah, no,
So,
that's the thing is that yes, he only taught for a year, but I don't think it was a bad year.
okay.
And the reason being is look at the date, 1856, and going into July of 1857. See anything that stands out to you?
Oh, yeah, that's right before the Civil War.
Yes, but this is also we were coming out Mexican American War.
Oh, I always forget about that war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we this is right around the time that when you look at the really like legit big names in the Civil War, General Lee, Grant, Longstreet, Stewart, Burnside, McClellan, yeah, Grant. Yeah, I mean, you start looking at a lot of the big players in the American Civil War. They all wore navy blue down in Arizona and Mexico, and they all fought side by side. Yeah, they basically brought in a very short period of time. They brought the entire Mexican army to Mexico City, and then it was decided like, okay, we're not going to take the city. We're not going to we're not going to absorb Mexico because everybody here speaks a very different language. Everybody here has a completely different culture than us. There's no point. But we're going to take Texas and New Mexico and the Arizona territory. We're going to take all that, and you're going to have to deal with it. So that's the thing. Like, to a young Custer at this time, this is intriguing. Keep in mind, he was a teenager at this time, so he was seeing this stuff go down, and then here he is, an elementary school teacher, but he felt like he had something more to him. He wanted to add another notch in his belt, or he wanted to make a name for himself, like what any other teenager, early 20 something wants to do. In July 1st, 1857, Custer signed up for West Point, and this was hilarious. He was supposed to graduate in 1862, and out of a class of 79 students, Custer was dead last in his class ranking.
Jeez.
Yeah. Yeah, some of these figures are hilarious. When Robert E. Lee, again, I don't want to get into the politics of, the social issues of what the South stood for versus what the North stood for, and, Robert E. Lee and everything. Historically, Robert E. Lee has always been a very respected figure because he was not a fan of slavery. I mean, he had technically inherited slaves from, his father-in-law, but yeah, he wasn't a big fan of it. But Robert Lee was always considered a Virginian and whatnot. When Robert E. Lee graduated West Point, he was second to the first.
Okay.
So Robert E. Lee was the very pinnacle of what West Point wanted to produce. And you'll notice that a lot of the Civil War generals in terms of the South, you'll notice that a lot of those top leaders were at the very, very, very high for the Confederacy. They were like the pinnacle of West Point. And then the Union soldier or the generals, the Union generals and the leaders that came out were like at the bottom. Like Grant was useless. I mean, Burnside was mediocre at best. McClellan, I can't even remember. I don't even think he even went to West Point.
I don't remember McClellan's background.
Yeah. Who's that guy? Oh yeah,
who's that guy?
Yeah,
it's been a bit. It's been like at least a solid 4 to 5 years since I've read up on all of that.
Yeah, I'm a huge Civil War nut, so I freaking love this stuff. But yeah, it's just funny how when we look at how many people died in the Civil War, it was in large part because that Confederate army, yes, they were understaffed. Yes, they didn't have the weapons. Yes, they lacked everything in terms of numbers, but their leaders were something else. And the Union side was they were very entitled. Like, oh well, I'm part of this family. I've done these things. I'm just gonna sign up. Like Lawrence Chamberlain, one of my favorite characters, one of my most favorite leaders of the Civil War. He was Colonel Chamberlain in the Gettysburg campaign, but he eventually became a general.
Okay.
He taught rhetoric. He signed up for the Union Army as a colonel. So
nice.
Just because he taught rhetoric, this guy was slotted to be a colonel. So, and he got his butt handed to him so many times by these Confederates. So yeah, to say that Custer was an absolute disaster of a student is that's actually an understatement. So
yeah,
in 1861, this little war broke out involving, a whole bunch of states seceding from the Union. Yeah, it was kind of a big deal, and that really shortened his coursework because he was technically in leadership training. Yeah, he graduated like a solid year early. He graduated in 1861. So out of 79 total students, 34 graduated, 23 dropped out, and 22 joined the Confederacy.
Okay.
And Custer, when he graduated West Point, he had accumulated 726 demerits.
Ooh.
And that's a lot. That's for just doing stupid crap. So imagine having a student who's been suspended 726 times.
I prefer the 3 strikes you're out rule.
But that's the thing, though. There's something about him. There's something lovable. There's something likable. There's something about him that you want to keep around, that you kind of want to foster. And I think that kind of student. I think you've seen that before, where you have that troublemaker who, like, at the spur of the moment, it's a very inappropriate thing to say, or he did a very stupid thing or whatever. But then on the other hand, it's like, dang, if you could foster that, if you could harness that, like this would be the
Yeah.
next president of the country.
Yeah, you just gotta learn how to control it.
Yeah. And possibly better than a guy who gets 30 indictments filed against him.
There is that part.
But we're not going to dive into that. We'll dive into that when the podcast is more established and we have lawyers.
Fair.
But yeah, no. So the other thing that kind of stood out to me was that, okay, so you have 79 students. So we'll say 80 students. 34 graduated, 23 dropped out, and then another 22 joined the Confederacy. So you're talking a graduating class that is literally graduating day one of the Civil War. Almost half of those graduated students, and literally like the other half, all who left the Union and seceded. It really kind of exemplifies the brother against brother mindset. These were guys that all knew each other. And this is one of the reasons why the Civil War was such a mess. It was such a disaster. Is that you knew very personally if you were a colonel or a general on one side and you're facing the opposing army, you knew that colonel or general on the other side. You went to school with that guy. You may have grown up with that guy in your town. But an episode that I may do later on is the Irish Brigades, because there was an Irish Brigade on the Confederate side, and then there was an Irish Brigade on the Union side, and literally most of these guys got off on the same boat from Ireland. And they had known each other since childhood from when they were in Ireland. And then now here they were squaring up and trying to kill each other. That to me, that's one of the most heartbreaking aspects of the Civil War. To switch gears a little bit, the local minister remembered Custer as the instigator of devilish plots during the service and in Sunday school. On the surface, he appeared attentive and respectable, but underneath, the mind boiled with disruptive ideas. So yeah, that's Custer in school. He's that guy. And I think everybody, anybody who's listening to this, you all can remember that once that fellow student in your English class or whatever who just got into unnecessary trouble for no reason at all, but you would maybe vote for him to be a politician or something of the nature. Let's get into the Civil War, right? Because Custer really exemplified himself. Custer kind of proved his valor a little bit. So, as with all West Point graduates, he started in the Army of the Potomac as a second lieutenant. So, yeah, you're fresh out of college. You're starting off as a basic officer. And then from here, we're going to see him just kind of skyrocket. So he primarily spent his time in the 2nd U.S. Cavalry. The famous 7th Cavalry that he's associated with hasn't been invented yet. Yeah, he's really known for running the 7th Cavalry, which extends all the way up to the present day. But
I assume we won't be talking about them this time, but next time?
Of the 7th Cav?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, actually, we're going to talk about that a little more later on in the final part where we're talking about the actual massacre. But the 7th Cavalry also has a storied history going all the way into the Vietnam War. The 7th Cavalry was considered the most highly trained cavalry, but when we get into Vietnam, these were your first troopers that hopped out of a helicopter.
Got it. Frontline guys.
Yeah, these were the guys. So you look at the Battle of Ia Drang in the Vietnam War.
Okay.
Um, that battle spanned 3 days. It was 400 7th Cavalry soldiers facing like thousands of Viet Cong.
Jeez.
And they held their ground and they actually took the mountain that they were surrounded by. So the 7th Cavalry is a very historic group of soldiers, but for now, Custer, hey, focus on the 2nd Cavalry, right? There's not a lot of us going around. We'll figure it out. So yeah, he spent most of his time in the 2nd Cavalry Regiment and was in the First Battle of Bull Run and the Manassas Campaign. So this guy is getting. These were the battles that kind of like. So when the Civil War first broke out, men, women, children were showing up. They're lining up on the sides of the battle, and oh look, here's our Civil War. Let's watch these soldiers fight it out. Let's see how this goes as a form of entertainment. I know. Yeah, it's crazy because in true dumpster fire fashion, within, I would say, maybe 20, 30 minutes of these battles starting, and they're seeing men just get ripped apart, legs blown off. They're seeing hand-to-hand combat where people are getting diced up. They're seeing people being burned alive. These early battles quickly turned into a oh boy, this is something else. And so yeah, Custer was in the middle of all that. By April of 1862, he moved to the 5th Cavalry. So hey, he's getting closer to that 7th, and he served under General George B. McClellan. So yeah, here we start to see Custer. He's kind of moving up the ranks a little bit as a cavalry officer. Keep in mind, this time the cavalry was, the peak of the military. The cavalry was supposed to be highly trained. They had the most technologically sophisticated weaponry.
Okay.
These were the guys that got, like, when you were trying to figure out budgets per division and whatnot, you always gave the cavalry more budget to work with. Yeah, Custer was kind of moving his way up, and McClellan wasn't a slouch. He was a bit of a complainer, but for the most part, capable. He was a capable general. So while pursuing Confederate General Joseph E. Johnston, so that was the first commanding general of the Confederacy. Everybody thinks that it was Lee from start to finish. No. Johnston was the guy who fired in Fort Sumter. Johnston was the guy who really kicked off the war when it wasn't supposed to be kicked off yet, but he was the main guy. But yeah, so Johnston took over. They got stuck on the Chickahominy River. General G. Bernard looked at the river that they were supposed to ford. And this is kind of funny because Custer was trying to make a name for himself. This Union general, General G. Bernard, he's like, well, crap, that river looks pretty deep. I don't know how deep it is. And so while the whole Union Army was chasing after Johnson, Custer was like, screw this. He rode out into the middle of this river and he got buried up to his waist or whatever. And he turned to the astonishment of everybody and shouted, hey, McClellan, this is how deep it is.
He Oregon Trailed it. What a dick. I'm sorry, part of my language was just the first word that came out. What a
but
jerk.
I mean, it does kind of stand out, though. It's like, here are these top Union generals, like, oh boy, that's a really deep river. I mean, this is preceding the Oregon Trail.
Right.
And so Custer, in true Oregon Trail fashion, he just rode out there and just like, well, it's up to my waist. That's how deep it is.
There you go.
And so, yeah, it's just like, oh, well, well, all right, I guess we can cross. Yeah, by June of 1863, Custer was assigned to Lieutenant Colonel Alfred Pleasonton, who was charged of locating Robert E. Lee's army moving through the Shenandoah Valley, which is this was the path that led up to Gettysburg. 1863, in my opinion, is hands down the most pinnacle or turning point year of the entire Civil War.
Okay.
Because by the time Gettysburg took place, General Lee had saved Richmond. He'd gotten Johnston demoted and moved someplace else. He was now the Army of Virginia, and he was now marching into Union territory. So the first year or so of the war, it was like the Union Army was just dominating the Confederacy. But then once Lee took over, because he was originally in the Army Corps of Engineers in the War with Mexico, he employed a lot of technological advancements or ideas, and he got he turned the tides of the war. Now Lee was heading up into Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Like Lee was only a couple hundred miles away from sacking Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And literally, like, Lee had a letter from his Virginian government saying, let's end this war now, and let's just be two independent countries, when he got embroiled in the Gettysburg campaign.
Yeah.
So yeah, Pleasanton was tired of political officers and started replacing subordinates with fighting men. Pleasanton appreciated Custer's fighting style and promoted him to general. So we're talking, Custer was now 23 years old, and he had now just received a field commission as a general.
Can you imagine? What was I doing at 23? I was working in a grocery store.
Oh, you weren't selling shoes yet?
Oh, that was before. I sold shoes before that.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
That's right, because, yeah, you and I both worked at the same company, but I thought that was after you were...
Yeah, no, I worked at that company during high school and, like, maybe the first 2 months of college.
It was a great company, wasn't it?
Solid.
But I'm right there with you. When I was 23, I was a basic manager at that company that no longer exists. Can we say what it is? If the company doesn't exist, we can say what it is, right?
I think so.
Sports Authority.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good times.
Yeah. Anyway, we worked at Sports Authority.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
Yeah, we were, you were selling...
Shoes.
Well, you sold shoes and I was selling jock straps.
Yeah.
So, yeah, happy times. He was promoted as a general and in the cavalry. So the thing to keep in mind here is that this is a field commission. The way field commissions work is that for as long as this war goes on, you will retain that rank. When that war is over, then you're going to go back to your original rank. So if you were let's say a lieutenant, in whatever position you were that you started the war off as, you were promoted all the way up to the rank of a general. When the war is over, you go back to being a lieutenant.
Okay.
That's the reason why here we're talking about General Custer, but then when we look at Custer's last stand, he was actually nothing more than a colonel.
Huh.
And there's also an issue where he kind of snuck out, hooked up with his wife. He kind of got in trouble for going AWOL, but that
that's besides the point.
Yeah. It's just you got to take care of business, man.
Yeah. For real.
So yeah, but regardless, he was the youngest general in the Union Army at the age of 23, and I get it that Custer has a bad rap, and a lot of it's kind of justified. I get that, but to achieve the rank of general in such a short period of time, there has to be something meritorious about it. There has to be something about this guy.
Yeah, they saw something about him.
Yeah. And
that they liked.
Now, keep in mind that the Union Army really struggled with trying to find top talent. I personally think General Hancock, if they had made him the main general in the very beginning, he would have defeated Lee very quickly, because General Hancock understood Lee. He appreciated his fighting style. I feel like Hancock could have fixed a lot of things, but there was a lot of politics involved.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's another episode.
Yep.
So yeah, right before the Battle of Gettysburg took place, Custer was assigned to locate J.E.B. Stuart's cavalry. The way General Lee operated his military is that he took his infantry and he divided it up into two parts. And I'm going to divide it up by percentages, but his main, and this is like his punching force, this was the knockout force, would consist of like 60% of the army. The other 40% was run by Stonewall Jackson. This was known as the Light Brigade. And this was the idea that smaller, faster moving, lighter equipped soldiers can inflict a lot more damage and cause a lot more disarray on the opposing army. And then when they're still trying to figure out how to reorganize or whatever, then Lee's main forces will come in and just overrun everything. And that is how Lee turned the fight from trying to defend Richmond, Virginia, all the way up into Pennsylvania and just a stone's throw away from Washington, D.C. So Jeb Stuart was one of the most highly regarded cavalry officers in all of America's history. This guy had zeal. He had a way of just promoting the most intense emotions and the most sense of pride, and I feel like that's one of the roles of a leader, is that a leader needs to be able to say, hey, I don't care if you're the lowest man on the totem pole. I don't care if you're the guy who cleans the crap out of, horseshoes or whatever.
Yeah.
You're just as important as that elite sniper or commanding general leading thousands of men into a battle. Like, he had a way of making people feel very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of the key to the success of the Confederate Army in that first half of the Civil War. We got Jeb Stuart's cavalry. After locating Stuart's cavalry, Custer, this became his mission. Custer was just devoted to try to take down Jeb Stuart as much as possible. So, yeah, after locating Stuart's cavalry, he set up a trap where his men hid on either side of the road, and Custer rode ahead as the bait. He rode ahead as like some ambivalent Union cavalry officer, like, oh, what am I doing here? And he purposely rode into the Confederate cavalry line as they were coming down the road. So he basically used himself as bait, and it worked. They started to chase him and his men down and the Confederates shot like half his men. So yeah, he had like 6-7 guys with him. A private rode up to Custer, grabbed him, and retreated to where the trap was. So yeah, Custer and a handful of followers went out there just to trick the Confederate army. And yeah, they rode into this maelstrom, and somehow Custer survived all that. And so the Confederate army chased Custer, and they basically rode into an ambush. 200 horse-mounted Confederate soldiers fell into an attack involving dismounted Union soldiers and 6 cannons loaded with grape shot. So they basically rode into a meat grinder. And that was like the first blow against the Confederate cavalry. Now, keep in mind, dismounted cavalry. Okay, just stick that in the back of your mind. The way that the cavalry worked is you would ride really, really fast, try to get into a proper position, try to get into a really, really good spot. Then you dismount.
Okay.
Then you would have a few guys take your horses away because that's your exit.
Right.
And then from there, since you've got the best ground, you've got the best position, then you would fight as basically as an infantryman. You would have a better gun. You would have slightly better technology. You would have more, cannons supporting you.
Mm-hmm.
But that's their thing: is stop, dismount, position yourselves, shoot a bunch of people, and then call your horses back, get back on them, run away. Okay, keep that in mind for future parts here, because that you'll see that doesn't work out so well.
Okay.
So yeah, Gettysburg was quite possibly his finest hour. While not directly involved with the main army, Cemetery Ridge and Little Round Top, Big Round Top, and all that stuff, his goal was to stop Jeb Stuart's cavalry from assisting with the main charge. During the final day of the battle, Custer frequently charged headfirst into Stuart's cavalry. Stuart had access to about 2,700 men.
Okay.
That's a
lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot of dudes.
That's a lot of people on horses.
That's a lot of people in a little locker room.
That's a lot of horse poo.
You're right. But a lot of fertilization power.
So yeah, those are some really fertilized fields afterwards. So Stuart had access to about 2,700 men, and had stood up against Custer had access to about 2,700 men, and he stood up against Stuart's 6,000 men, who were rested and fully armed. At the end of the conflict, Custer was successful in preventing Stuart from entering the main charge and lost about 257 men.
Mm-hmm.
Custer's brigade, in general, lost 257 men at Gettysburg, the highest total loss of any brigade. It's quoted, "I challenge the annals of warfare to produce a more brilliant and successful charge of cavalry." Custer wrote in his report, and of course, who knows how flamboyant that could be, for a gallant and meritorious services, he was awarded a regular Army brevet promotion to Major General. So we're talking about a guy who had a much, much smaller cavalry.
Yeah.
2,700 men versus 6,000. And Stuart, 6,000 men. That was these guys. When you look at the war, there's very, very few generals that stood out in terms of cavalry performance. On the Union side, it was Buford. Buford always got credit for stalling Lee's army.
Mm-hmm.
He had, I think it was like 1,000 men, and he stopped the entire army of Virginia for like a day or so, which is insane.
Yeah.
But then you also have Stuart, who was the eyes and ears of the Confederacy. Yeah, Stuart was a force to be reckoned with, and Custer put him in his place.
Right.
So now we have Custer. He took on the most highly trained, most powerful cavalry force of the war and defeated him. I want to say defeated him, prevented him from getting involved, because the way that the Battle of Gettysburg, which again would be another episode, the Battle of Gettysburg the defeat was dealt in a way that the Confederate Army just launched in force, in mass. It was just this gigantic charge that would only work if the cavalry would assist, and they weren't able to assist. And so the superior Union artillery just demolished the Confederate army, and that's what turned the tides of the war.
Right.
So one could argue that Custer played a major part in turning the tides of war.
Yeah.
Not bad for a guy who had 700 plus demerits in West Point.
Yeah, no, not too shabby. Not too shabby for an F student.
Yeah, no, it's just not bad at all. And so for the second half of the war, Custer and Stuart seemed to trade blows until Stuart was mortally wounded in the Battle of Yellow Tavern. That's actually a battle that I'm not familiar with.
Me neither.
That's a future episode. Custer was also involved in the Battle of Trevilian Station, where both sides tried to destroy each other's supply trains. This was the most major battle between cavalry versus cavalry.
It sounds like a cool action movie.
Yeah, I feel like this could be almost like a John Wick type of horse fight.
Something cool like that.
You haven't seen that movie yet, the fourth one? Okay, good. Because if you would have spoiled it for me, I would have disowned you.
I have a confession.
Okay.
I have not sat down and watched any John Wick film.
I think I'm going to disown you now.
Okay.
They're amazing.
I'll watch them maybe on Sunday or something.
Look, okay, it's graphic fighting. It's not for the I don't know, for the more docile person in the world. It's not watch this. Keep in mind that the tactics, the way that these fights are fought, are like textbook in terms of legit real fights, not Matrix stuff. Yeah, if you want to kind of see how a gunfight can play out in a cinematic way, yeah, it's pretty good stuff. Yeah, just go watch it. The photography is amazing. I love the photography. I've actually just watched all the movies over. I could care less about the fight scenes. I just love the photography. So, but anyways, I want to wrap this up. We're just gonna fly through some of his later military accomplishments leading up to the Plains Wars. So yeah, Custer and Stewart kind of went back and forth, and eventually Custer defeated Stewart. Stewart was mortally wounded, and so General Custer, believe it or not, was actually present at the Appomattox Courthouse. For those of you who may not know, the Appomattox Courthouse is a place I hope to go to someday, because that is probably the most seminal American moment. I mean, memorable moment or pinnacle or turning point of American history next to the signing of the Declaration of Independence. The battle, or not battle, but the Appomattox Courthouse, that is where Lee surrendered to Grant. And I want to take a minute to go over one huge thing here. General Grant was the guy who defeated Lee. And when Robert E. Lee showed up, he was dressed in the full general garb.
Yeah, he was dressed to the nines. Like, he wanted to look good.
Yeah, he wanted...
when he was surrendering.
Yeah, he wanted to make sure that, hey, I'm a proud guy.
Yeah.
I fought my fight. I'm surrendering, but I am here because this is this is who I am. This is what I represent, and I'm not going to tarnish that or anything.
Yeah.
Grant shows up, and he's hungover.
Mm-hmm.
He is covered in mud.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
His coat, vest, everything was just a shambles.
Mm-hmm.
He still had some bullet holes in his coat.
Yes.
And the guy was just an absolute train wreck.
Okay, but I'm fond of Grant. Let me tell you about Grant.
Okay. All right, go for it.
Grant suffered from depression, and he was a raging alcoholic. And
is that all?
During that time, I believe during the Civil War, he promised to stay sober. So I think he was, if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I've read up on his biography, but at the surrender, he was either drinking in secret or he was suffering from not drinking because he was trying hard to not.
Okay.
Anyways, sorry. I'm very protective of Grant.
So I want to add one piece to that. Okay. Because I think I agree with all aspects of what you're saying. I feel like Grant learned that I can't beat Lee, even with my overwhelming numbers. I can't beat Lee, trashed out of my mind, but I also can't exist without being trashed out of my mind.
Yeah.
So what Grant did was he looked at Lee, and Lee would split his army into two parts. Okay. You would have the heavy hitting part, and then, you would have the lighter strike force part, and then you would have the heavy hitting part. I think Grant was able to pick up on that.
Mm-hmm.
And so what he did, and this was the only thing he could figure out that could defeat Lee was that where Lee split his army into two parts, Grant split his army into three parts. And so he divided everybody up into like 8-hour increments. And so every 8 hours, they were attacking Lee and they were attacking the entire Confederacy. So every 8 hours, if you think about it, most battles lasted 4 to 5 hours. So yeah, every 8 hours, 4 to 5 hours of that 8-hour shift was a battle.
Jesus.
Grant, he was up all night. He was up all day. He stayed in contact for every single conflict that took place. And so, yeah, Grant, I agree. Grant was probably secretly drunk out of his mind, but this was the only way he could figure out how to defeat a superior foe. And this is the reason why Robert E. Lee is so highly regarded, is because, like, yeah, he had like 40,000 men, and he's taking on 187,000 men. And Lee just kept unleashing unbelievable amounts of damages and losses and whatnot to Grant.
Yeah.
And so Grant's like, okay, cool. If that's a good play, then we're just going to attack and attack and attack and attack until you have no choice but to give up. If you look at Lee's losses during these final times of the war, they paled in comparison to what the Union side was suffering.
Yeah, for sure.
And so when we look at Grant, and he showed up, and he's probably hungover, but his boots are muddy, and his coat is a mess, and
he looks like a dumpster fire.
Yeah, but I think
like a walking fire.
He did that on purpose. He wanted to show Lee, hey, this is what you have done to me. This is what you have driven me to. So when Grant showed up, let's say you knew nothing about the Civil War. Let's say you knew nothing about how it was fought or anything beyond it. You like, if you were some alien species looking at the situation, you would say, dude, Grant got his ass kicked. Like, he got destroyed, and Lee is the victor. And that is exactly what Grant wanted to portray. He wanted to show Lee, bro, this is what you have done to me. You have run me into the ground. You've run my army into the ground. And it was a huge political statement to say, look, obviously you guys, you stood what you meant for, what you fought for. You lost, but you still have your dignity. And this was the thing. This was the moment that Lee went back to his side, because his side was like, hey, let's disperse. Let's spread everybody out. Let's fight a guerrilla warfare. And Lee was like, no, we're not going to fight a guerrilla warfare. We're done. The war is over. So when I look at Grant, I feel like a lot of what he did on those maybe 2 hours, maybe it was an hour, I don't know, the signing of that, that surrender.
Yeah.
I feel like Grant was doing everything in his power to maintain the pride and respect of the forces that he defeated. So,
I never thought about that.
Let's put things into perspective a little bit. So they signed the surrender, and Lee was like, okay, cool, we'll hand over our guns. And Grant was like, no, you will not hand over your guns. Your men need that to hunt. Your men need to, try to find food on the way home. And then Grant asked, and I kid you not, Kara, I have a book on this whole thing. It's like 300 pages of just what happened at that courthouse.
Mm-hmm.
Grant asked, like, okay, so if your men are hungry, what sort of resources do you need? And so basically a unit of food or a unit of resources would last a soldier for like 3-4 days or whatever. Lee was like, hey, I could use 20,000, 30,000 units of resources, hoping that he could get something to keep his men fed for just a few days. And Grant's like, well, I don't have that. But I do have like 180,000. So yeah, we'll give that to you guys. And that was like that was more food and resources than what most of the Confederate Army had to deal with for most of the war. And so like the whole Appomattox courthouse thing, this whole scene really was the absolute pinnacle of America fixing itself.
Yeah.
And I love Grant, because Grant also inspired a very tired, very weakened, very beat up, exhausted American general in World War II. And so yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes on here. When you're the victor and when you show up as the guy, like, dude, you have beaten the living crap out of me for X amount of weeks, months, or years. You're surrendering to me and you're looking this good. I want you to be aware of the toll that it took on me. And that's exactly what Grant wanted to do. Also, Grant had to delay things. Grant had to delay the signing of some very important constitutional amendments. A lot of what Grant had to do, because he was kind of in the back pocket of Abraham Lincoln, he had to stall the war. He couldn't finish it off the way he wanted to, or as quickly as he wanted to, because if we end the war and the Confederacy is brought back in, then any chance of slavery being abolished constitutionally will be gone.
Right. Because then there would be more votes to the Confederacy, or, well, people who were in the Confederacy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Makes
And
sense.
so, yeah, I feel like, hey, yeah, no, it's cool that the Declaration of Independence was signed in a certain way or written in a certain way, or even our Constitution was written in a certain way. I feel like the couple of days before and after that Appomattox courthouse signing, I think was probably one of the most influential and most important moments in American history,
I can agree.
because that determined, like, the Confederate Army was fully set up to go into a guerrilla warfare, and let's drag this out for years and decades. And Lee came out of like, no, 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 no. We fought. We're defeated. We're gonna go back home. We're gonna go back to our families, and we're gonna move on. Even though we may not like the outcome, but we're gonna move on. And the only way Grant could do that is to show Lee, like, dude, you wrecked me. This is what I had to go through. The same way this is exactly what happened when MacArthur signed the surrender of the Japanese Empire and then Missouri battleship. That's exactly what MacArthur did. He showed up wearing borderline a t-shirt, pants. He was exhausted. He looked like hell. The Japanese Admiralty and all that, they showed up wearing everything to the nines, and he blatantly said, like, guys, you drove me to near extinction.
Yeah.
And MacArthur was like, I don't know what to say. This is what I had to do, and your guys' superior strategies, figures, and numbers and talent, this is where we're at. And so in part of defeating an enemy, you almost have to empower them to join you, if that makes sense.
Right. It makes sense because you have to rely on them to rebuild.
Exactly. That's what Alexander the Great did. That's what Caesar did. That's what a lot of conquering leaders did. Is, I'm going to take over your city. You're all going to hail me, but you know the guy that you answered to before I took him over? He's still going to be the guy. And so that's a lot of what was going on here. And Custer was a part of all that. He saw all that.
He was there, man.
Yeah, he was there. His wife, Pleasanton, actually saw the desk. I don't think it was a desk. I think it was more like a coffee table, but whatever. Pleasanton, who was Custer's superior commander, saw where the end of the Civil War took place on this tabletop, and he gave that to Custer's wife.
That's kind of cool.
And I guess it's now in the Smithsonian.
Okay.
I've offered to Smithsonian, like, hey, $50, I'll buy the table off you. They haven't responded.
It's worth a shot. You can keep writing letters, though. They might answer you at some point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, worked for the Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're running kind of long here. So what I want to do is I just want to quickly go over the post-war issues. The post-war issues set things up for the Sioux Wars, which will be our next episode.
Okay.
So, real quick, I'm going to blitz this, and hopefully I get this right. So, after the war, Custer found himself dealing with a more political issue rather than a military tactics. And this was especially true in Texas. A lot of the men in Texas wanted to be held in a position of greater pay than their current positions of active duty soldiers. So, you had a lot of Union soldiers that were in Texas. Texas was a somewhat neutral. Yes, they sided with the Confederacy. They really did, but they kind of didn't. Texas has been its own country since Texas was brought on board. Yeah, it is still that way today. Like Texas's infrastructure and everything is all inclusive. They don't take anything from anybody else. Yeah, Texas is its own country. A lot of the men in Texas wanted to be held in a position of greater pay than the current positions of active duty soldiers. Many of the officers and soldiers resented his approach and tried to overthrow him in November of 1865. This is kind of vague, and I try to dig into this, but yeah, Custer got downwind of the plot and had it taken down. It was destroyed.
He had it taken care of like the mafia.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people were dispatched. A lot of people were
taken care of.
Yeah, yeah. They're
probably sleeping with the fishies.
There was a guy named Joe Pesci who just you just know how to make people disappear.
Yeah, kind of like that.
And so, yeah. So Custer, I feel like he probably got some of these strategies from the, I feel like he probably learned some of this while working closely with the Southern, leadership. Not that the Southern leadership was doing crap like this, but the Southern, the Confederacy had a way of handling things, especially like treasonous people and whatnot. Yeah, there's a reason why we don't see them in the textbooks anymore.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So it was after this that Custer got involved with more serious issues afflicting America. So offered a position and like a $10,000 amount of gold as adjutant general of the army of Benito Juarez of Mexico. Custer kind of discovered that, wait, this guy is just a puppet. This guy is, he's a puppet to French Emperor Napoleon III. And so, like, Custer didn't really want to be associated with that much more. From here, Custer was forced to be involved with Andrew Johnson's, tour of the country as a means to attract proponents of restoration. But we all know what happened to Andrew Johnson. This guy was labeled as like douche bag of
post-war douche.
Yeah, but a post-Lincoln environment, like, so yeah. So he was tied in with all that. It was going to get ugly pretty fast. So then in July 28th, 1866, Custer was appointed as lieutenant colonel and then newly created 7th Cavalry. Here we are, 7th Cavalry.
Did it.
This is the group of people that got annihilated. In July of 1867, he joined up with Major General Winfield Scott Hancock. Yeah, he's my favorite guy in all the Civil War. You know, he had a Hancock. So now we are diving into the expedition of, to Cheyenne. You know Cheyenne. I know Cheyenne. We all know Cheyenne as Cheyenne, Wyoming, which is the most nightmarish location that you want to try to send trucks through when the weather is bad.
Yes.
Yes.
I know.
So, yeah, in July of 1867, he joined up with Major General Winfield Scott Hancock expedition against the Cheyenne. While during the campaign, Custer was arrested and suspended for going AWOL in 1868 for abandoning his post to see his wife. Because, priorities.
That's the second time that you've written this in this.
Yeah.
He loves his wife. And I'm happy for them.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is this
You can't be mad. I am mad about that. Man loves his wife.
Yeah. Like the guy, I put this in because he's a human.
Yeah.
He's a living, breathing creature. When he married his wife, she was way above his station. In fact, her father was like, "Why are you even entertaining this idiot?" And so this is the reason why I don't think when we look at the Battle of Bighorn, I don't feel like he was completely delusional. If he was delusional, I feel like he would have completely ignored the relationship that he had with his wife. I feel like he would have not even acknowledged her. But there are literally hundreds of letters of Custer writing his wife.
Oh, that's actually really sweet.
Yeah, like he's not that. Yeah, I feel like he's a little bit more grounded than what we give him. I'm a firm believer that the only way you can ground a man, the only way you can, I don't know, say bring him to reality or bring him to a sense of reasonability is if there is a wife or a girlfriend or a significant other that is in tow that is making that happen. And so for me, I don't know, whenever I say stupid crap, which is pretty much every day, my wife is in the background like, "You're saying stupid stuff." Like, "Oh, okay." And so I feel like that's what's going on here. And so, yeah, we're going to kind of finish off here with Custer being involved with the Indian Wars as a request of General Sheridan. So Sheridan was a big fan of Custer. General Sheridan needed Custer for his upcoming winter campaign against the Cheyenne, which we're going to talk about in the next episode. He was allowed to return to duty well short of his 1-year suspension. So yeah, Custer got busted. He got caught, hooking up with his wife because that's a shame. And so yeah, he was brought back a year early. At this point, Custer was now involved in the Indian Wars, where U.S. forces tried to calm and reduce inter-Native American conflicts that were, for the most part, American-made and instigated. So that's something that we're going to kind of look at in the next episode. But by April of 1866, Custer had gotten himself in the middle of a political ordeal involving Secretary of War William W. Belknap, who had already resigned, and President Grant. So now, keep in mind, President Grant, or Ulysses S. Grant, and Custer did not get along. They did not see each other on equal plane. Grant wanted his brother Orville to be in certain positions of mining opportunities and whatnot. Yeah, it got complicated. So brother Orville, who had been accused of selling lucrative trading positions where soldiers were required to make their purchases. Custer was only interested in the upcoming conflict involving the Sioux, who had discovered gold in their reservations. So, again, we moved the Sioux, or the Lakota, into this one tract of land. Then suddenly, independent American contractors were moving out, and they were like, oh my God, there's gold on this Indian land. Let's take it. Well, that's not going to sit well from a group of people that have already been relocated multiple times over.
Right.
So yeah, it kind of boiled over into a political issue where, like this Belknap guy, he got impeached. Custer got in the middle of it. All he was trying to do was just get back out to the plains. He was just trying to get back into the fight. And yeah, it kind of boiled over where Belknap was impeached and Custer saw an opportunity to ridicule the Republican government. It's not the same Republican government that we have today, and potentially run for a bit as president as Democrat. We're not going to explore that because Custer didn't make it that far. So when Custer was kind of, against Grant, both Custer's superiors, Sheridan and Sherman, wanted Custer to excuse himself from all this mess. And then what Custer did was like, he reached out to Grant and multiple times, be like, hey, I'm going to recuse myself. I'm going to back out of this. Let's you and I talk. I need to return to these wars. No, at no time did Grant ever give any sort of permission for Custer to do this. And so Custer was like, well, no news is good news. And so he left. And then shortly after he left to go attend these wars, Custer, whatchamacallit, yeah, Grant had Custer arrested in Chicago.
Oh, lovely.
For, had him arrested for bailing out on this whole General Alfred Terry, the whole Belknap thing. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so he had him arrested, but then it was overturned because a lot of people portrayed Custer as like the American Caesar. And so, because of this whole conflict, one has to ask, okay, Custer stood up to the President of the United States, and he was defiant, and he won. Because of popular opinion, compared him to the next American Caesar. So what would Grant do? And this is the big question. This is what I'm going to leave off here before we switch over to the Native American side. If you're the President of the United States and you're, Master and Commander or Commander-in-Chief of all the military, you got a guy who has openly been defiant against you, and you have arrested, and he has now been pressured into being free and clear. How do you take care of a military commander who could be a huge threat to you? How do you take care of somebody like that?
Are you asking me, or are you just
kidding?
Oh.
Yeah, if you've got somebody who is outsmarted you, who's outpopularized you, and he has continuously been defiant towards you in the way that this whole Sheridan and Belknap and this whole, this hot mess unfolded. You got a guy who doesn't have to listen to you as the supreme commander of the army. What do you want to do to a guy like that?
I mean, me personally, I'd try to get on the guy's good side and team up with him. Because, like, he's outsmarted me. And we've been playing chess for a while, and apparently I'm losing, so I might as well, instead of fighting against that current, go with that flow and see how that goes instead.
Okay. But you have a logical mind. You have a wise mind. What do you do if you're a president who's still a raging alcoholic who doesn't know what else to do with an openly defiant, commander of a very, very important part of the cavalry?
From the perspective of a raging alcoholic, throw a toddler fit tantrum, break a lot of things, drink
and
more,
try to figure out how to get this guy killed.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard for me to get into that frame of mind.
Yeah, because that's the thing. That's not how you operate as a logical human being. I feel like I would hope you and I would be like, well, there's something going on with this guy, and he's outsmarted us. There's got to be a peaceful way to work this out.
Yeah, let's sit down and talk to this guy.
But if we're short of that, then how do we find out how to get this guy killed?
Right, get rid of him so he's not a problem anymore.
And we just so happen to know about a gigantic Lakota Sioux encampment in the Dakotas going into Montana and the works. Like, we know of like thousands of potential hostiles to our expansion out west that could possibly take care of a very small, underfunded 400 to 500 guys that we're going to deprive of necessary ammunition and military intelligence. This is the perfect way to get rid of him. And he can still die a hero. And I still keep my job.
Jeez.
Do you see how this is kind of unfolding a little bit?
Yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah.
I'm also like, for all of our listeners out there, it's almost midnight and I'm like half asleep, so I apologize for like the slow and half thoughts.
I know, I blab.
No, it's okay. I feel bad because I'm like, what?
Well, that's the thing. That's kind of the stuff what these guys were dealing with too. These were decisions that were being made at ungodly times. But I guess like because I'm going to wrap this up here in a minute or so. There was so much more when I dug into this. When I see how human politics work, when I see how all this works in the modern age. It's no different than what was going on in Custer's age. And I feel like Custer was kind of set up and he kind of got outplayed by a federal government that he was kind of openly against in a lot of different areas. And so I feel like if Custer had some of the intelligence that he was supposed to be given, he would have been a bit more successful. But then again, though, in a follow-up episode here, the Lakota, they weren't stupid. They knew what they were doing. And they were fully prepared to square up and tee off on Custer and make a huge impact into how American civilians would view this Custer's last stand sort of thing. So yeah, that's part one.
Cool.
I know it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's not quite a dumpster fire.
Not yet.
But I it will turn into one here in a little bit.
Yes. And to put it in perspective, guys, we just went through the entire Civil War in a matter of like an hour and a half. That's pretty solid.
Yeah, seeing how there's like podcasts out there that have been going on for like 5 years and they're still like their first year of the war.
Yeah, like honestly, you could talk about the Civil War for a very, 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 very long period of time. It's one of my favorite pieces of history.
Yes.
And I wish I could have been more vocal and involved, but like I said, it's almost midnight and I'm dying. So I'm gonna try harder next time.
No. You have some epic work coming up. I'm still very, very, very excited to hear your episode on art restoration disasters.
You know, compared to this though, I feel like it's just kind of lame.
No, it's not.
All right.
We're talking about art pieces that took 4 to 5 years to make.
That's fair.
That got wrecked in an evening.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, and we're not even going to get like we haven't even touched on the maple leaves yet, covering certain body parts.
That's true.
So yeah, that's part 1 of our Custer's Last Stand, which didn't even come close to his last stand. But yeah, keep listening. We'll get this out soon. Kara's got some great stuff coming up shortly. And yeah, keep it a hot mess.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.